On today's segment of Mindful Leaders, we zoom into the life of Paolo Pirjanian. Paolo is the founder and CEO of Embodied Inc., the company that invented the famous Moxie robot that helps children address social difficulties and emotional anxieties.
Will you help me breathe like a bee to relax?
Yes.
Born to Armenian parents in Tehran, Paolo's life turned upside down during the Iranian Revolution, which led him and his family to escape and eventually settle in the small town of Aalborg in Denmark, where he magically discovered the world of robotics and machine learning, directing him towards a successful career with NASA JPL, iRobot, and Evolution Robotics. Today, we touch upon the pros and cons connected with AI, the role of leaders and educational systems, ways to unlock our passions, and the intention behind Moxie the Robot to help create a better future filled with empathy, kindness, and compassion. Paolo, what a pleasure to have you here. Same with Moxie. Thank you for being here on Mindful Leaders.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Paolo, you are sending a huge tidal wave through society by developing Moxie the Robot. And apart from Moxie, you attend different conferences I see and the different interviews you give about machine learning and robotics. What is your mission?
First of all, it's very heartwarming for me to see how people are reacting to Moxie and our company. I think it brings inspiration to young people and it brings pride to our nation. So that's a bit surprising to me, but I'm very honored to be part of that. Our mission as a company is to create robots that are going to take care of people. Moxie is focused on children. In the future, we'll have robots that take care of the elderly. There's a massive need for it in the market. And then our goal is that we can have Armenia participate in the AI and robotics revolution, which I believe is an important thing that for us to find our role in that revolution that's happening.
Right. You, before I get a bit more about what Moxie does, I feel, or I know we had a conversation about this, that Moxie partially was inspired by your parents, Ruben and Hasmig, because they sacrificed so much of their lives and their profession to helping you and your brother Piero have a better life. You went through different challenges from fleeing Iran. Take me a little bit after Iran, what happened and what kind of emotional distress that you actually overcame that shaped you into who you are today?
I remember my dad, when I was a kid, he would always tell me, sometimes you spend a penny, you spend too much. Sometimes you spend everything you have, you haven't spent enough. And unfortunately, they had to live up to that, a promise of that phrase. When we were kids born in Iran, it wasn't safe as minority Christians and so on to stay there after the revolution. There was the war and all these things, and my parents literally sacrificed everything. Yeah. Not only financially, but also from their own lifestyle and friendships and family. So they sent us abroad, my brother and I. We actually fled through the mountains to Turkey and then ended up in Denmark. It's a long story, I don't want to bore you with that. And then my parents gave up everything and left as well. So my dad really lived up to that promise. I felt really bad when I got to my teens. I felt really bad about the sacrifice they made for us. And I made a promise to myself to honor that sacrifice by doing the best I can in bettering myself, getting the best education I can, as well as having an impact on the world.
But it wasn't easy being in Aalborg. I mean, Aalborg is a small town of about 300,000 people. It's not Copenhagen, no Armenians. Did people actually think of you as being some kind of a minority who's not capable or competent? Did that give you some kind of a drive as well to prove that, you've got that grit?
Absolutely. It actually developed the grit in me because I think it's never right to discriminate against anyone for any reason because of hair color, accent, ethnicity, or any other reason. And I had to defy that. So I had to prove and show that I can be as good as you or even potentially better than you.
You know, I can't help also to think, when I think about your life story, that I don't think things happen by chance. I think things happen for a reason. And I remember the story you told me about how you were planning to go to Spain as a, you know, in your 18 or 19-year-old at this point. And, you know, due to different restrictions that took place in Spain, you actually stayed in the summer and used that cash to purchase your first computer. And it's like as though everything was serendipitously placed for you to discover what your true passion was, which was robotics at the time. And at that time, there were no computers, or if there were, it was very, very seldom. But today, and you being a former, you know, professor from at a university, I'm just curious to know, what is wrong with our education system today that doesn't enable people to find, not everybody has that chance to be able to see what they can potentially do or what their passion is. What's missing in our education system today in this area?
I'm obviously not an expert in education, but I can share my personal opinion about it. I think our society doesn't allow for unstructured exploration, like for our kids. So we are partially, as parents, we are at fault, I believe. Living in the US, every waken hour of every child is scheduled to do something productive. Go to tennis, go to piano lessons, go to some second language, and so on. We want to keep them occupied. And I think a lot of discovery happens when you can explore sort of randomly, where you have unstructured time to just do what feels right, follow your curiosity, and experiment. This is, for instance, as you mentioned, my personal journey. Looking back, it was serendipity that the Spanish government at that moment in time had to change the law such that I couldn't travel there, and I took the money that I'd paid for my ticket and bought the cheapest computer I could get. That completely changed the trajectory of my life. It just really was a different fork that no one could have planned for, and so on. So having the ability to have these random explorations and having time which is not planned out with a clear objective and saying, I'm going to be the best tennis player or basketball player or pianist and so on, allows you to explore in areas that no one could have imagined. And I feel like that we don't allow. Even in school, it's very structured. I mean, the current schooling system was invented during the Industrial Revolution. It's structured to teach you to follow instructions and do work because it was for factory workers.
Right.
And it hasn't really been reinvented. And I think it's time to reinvent that. Learning happens outside of the classroom a lot more than in the classroom, in my opinion. Many children or adults, you ask them how much of the schooling you've had, even in the university, are you using nowadays? It actually turns out that not much. Unless you've really stuck to the same profession you had, you were the smartest or the luckiest person to have known exactly what you want to do 20 years from now, you are probably not using much of that. So I think that's my perspective on it. We got to allow for exploration and experimentation.
Yeah. Yeah, you did mention curiosity is one of your driving forces, so yeah, thank you. But I'm coming back to the future. I mean, you are in AI, you are in machine learning and in this area of technology. And without knowing what the world will be like in the next 20 years, what skills and what's the point of actually going to university? Because even the children who are now learning to code computers, AI will be able to do that better than humans maybe in 20 years from now. So what are the skills that we should look for to improve ourselves? I mean, this is a question that I debate with my own family. I'm curious to know what you think.
Yes. My son actually challenged me. He's actually getting a degree in computer science, and he challenged me. He says, well, with AI writing code now, why do I need to go to school to learn coding? And this is happening right now, actually. I mean, AI algorithms can write much better code than humans can. My personal opinion is that the most important skill you learn in school is how to learn, is learning how to learn, how to explore, how to acquire knowledge. Explore your curiosity. As you mentioned, this has been my driving force, has been all the unknowns. I've always been attracted to the unknown because I don't know much about it. It's like, okay, let's open that door, that Pandora's box, and try to see if we can figure it out. So acquiring knowledge, I think, is one of the most important things we can learn. And then another thing I've learned in retrospect, when I look back in my career, that I feel now in retrospect was a big blind spot for me, was what we call EQ skills, emotional intelligence skills. And I do believe with AI becoming more and more prevalent in every aspect of our life, what is going to be unique about us is being human, having human emotions, having ability to have empathy and kindness. I think that is going to be what's unique about us, because more and more so, and very rapidly in the recent years, the line between what artificial intelligence can do and what human intelligence can do is blurring very rapidly, even in the areas that we would have not imagined. Like just in the last couple of years with ChatGPT type of transformer models, prior to that, everyone would say, well, what's unique about us and AI can never do is creativity. You have seen probably algorithms like Midjourney or even ChatGPT can now make drawings and paintings with just a prompt, which is a text description of saying, I want a picture of a monkey in a pink suit on the moon with a blue background. And it will happen in a matter of seconds. And now they're becoming photorealistic. This is spilling into even creating videos, footage. I think within the next 12 to 24 hours, we can see a full feature film created by AI. Then we say music and this and that and that. So it turns out that we are not that unique in that aspect. So I think what's going to help us stand out and be unique and probably create a better future for all of us is being more kind to each other, having empathy, and having strong EQ skills.
Yeah. I agree with you. I mean, I can't help but think about how there are so many challenges that humankind is facing today. And I always pose this question to many of my guests, thinking, you know, obviously AI has produced so many benefits to mankind or to people, but also there's this fear of how things, you know, jobs will be replaced. I mean, look what's happening in the Netherlands now. The farmers are, you know, protesting. In Greece, farmers are protesting because AI-produced machinery is actually producing cheaper produce and vegetables and fruits than what they can. And there's still no universal basic income to ensure that everybody can have that. Now in Guatemala, the robots will be able to make t-shirts cheaper. You know, what's going to happen to their livelihood? So my question is, yeah, there are benefits. And then I get scared when I see what Elon Musk is doing with this new robot. You know, have you seen the Neuralink, the robot that actually picks up the egg and just kind of takes it? It's like basically like a human being. Even though what you're saying is true, I can't help but think how people can actually misuse the benefit of any kind of robotics or anything produced by AI. Aren't you concerned?
I am concerned because of ourselves. Because we can't help ourselves to abuse any new technological advantage to our own benefit as individuals, as countries, as region, as companies potentially. So I can definitely see the double-edged sword, right? On one hand, I can see a utopian future where AI is going to make lives much better. But on the other hand, knowing the human nature, I can also see the dystopian future where it can be abused. I get asked this question a lot on panels or presentations on stage. And I remember in New York, I was at this conference recently called Games for Change. I was talking about AI and how it's going to impact providing care for humans, which is what I'm focused on. and someone challenged me with this question and said, what do you think? Don't you think there should be regulation? We should put the stops on, brakes on, and all these things. And being Armenian and knowing what we went through in 2020 and all these things, I challenged the reporter by having this other question. I said, okay, so we have a lot of regulation about human rights. We have a lot of regulation about use of weapons, war crimes, this and that and that. In 2020, we violated all these rules. When Azerbaijan, in cooperation with Israel and Turkey and Pakistan, attacked Armenia, they had mercenaries here. They were using the state-of-the-art drone technology, the Bayraktar. And I said, so what did you do about that? It violated every law that we know. What did you do about it? Nothing. So it can't be human right or right if it only supports my personal interest. It has to be universal, right? And this is not how we behave. I mean, unfortunately, we have conflicts in the world right now that are going on in Gaza, in Ukraine, and so on. A lot of human rights are being violated there too. But what are we doing about it? Nothing. So I'm not, to be honest with you, I don't have much patience for lip service type of approach to dealing with this. At the end of the day, we are going to determine how we're going to act. And if we are altruistic, if we are equal and don't discriminate, then it will be a better world, independent of this technology. I mean, we don't really need this technology to have a dystopian future. We already have it in regions of the world. The utopian version of this is that, yes, transitions are hard. Jobs will be lost or displaced. But I do believe people's quality of life can increase. We will have, AI is going to automate a lot of jobs. So productivity will go through the roof. Productivity will increase the GDP in every country in the world. We will solve problems with respect to energy and other natural resources and so on. So there's been an abundance of everything because of AI and similar technologies. So in reality, we should all prosper, right? We have GDP is going to grow by 10x, 100x, whatever it is. We're going to have an abundance of natural resources. So hopefully that will lead to reducing greed and hunger for power. We don't have to worry about work and income. It will be available to us. So maybe we can become more humans and enjoy life and help each other to make a better place in the world. It's possible. That's a narrative that is absolutely a possibility, and AI uniquely will empower us to be able to do that. But unfortunately, if history is a predictor of the future, we are our own worst enemies. We are not going to let that happen. But again, my role here is to work on the narrative I believe is the right narrative. This is why we've created a robot that's teaching children how to be empathetic, how to have high EQ skills, and so on. But at the same time, I'm realistic, and I understand there are forces that are going to push in the other direction.
So many different questions just popped in my head while you were talking. I'm going to probably start off with kind of continuing, maybe challenging you a little bit more about this idea about what's happening in the world. We are in a new era of war. And I can't help but see, more nation states becoming much more imperialistic. I mean, you just mentioned, obviously, Middle East, Ukraine and Russia, what happened, with Azerbaijan attacking not just Artsakh, also Armenia proper. It just seems like nations are becoming much more selfish and worrying about their own, there's no more that global order like we used to know while we were growing up. And so you see nations actually putting even more money of their nation's budget in defense. So you can't help but think, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? And you raised that point. Now the question that came to me was, so yeah, I could probably do things on my own, but I also anticipate leaders to having changed their narratives. the way it's working right now, I don't see that happening. What wisdom should leaders have today? And I don't mean just nation states, it could be just even corporate leaders. What wisdom and how should the narrative change for leaders to help improve the way we see the world order?
I don't think I have a solution for that, unfortunately.
Your idea, your input?
I mean, my only way of thinking about this is that we got to nurture better human beings from the very moment they get born. Better education, and again, it's not only education in the classroom, but also education about being a human, having high EQ skills, having empathy, inspiring them to do good in the world. This is really the only way I can see this changing. I mean, we are the problem.
I agree. And we are the problem, yet we still create things that actually distance us from anything that's related to human connection. Yes. I mean, I love what you did with Moxie, and I'd like to talk about Moxie a little bit more, but I can't help but think that if, virtual reality has distanced us so much from social reality, how do we actually see technology helping us build those social skills that we need to avoid the problems that you're mentioning? I'm having a difficult time seeing that for myself. Maybe you can shed some light on that.
I mean, again, yes, you're absolutely right. Social media, screen time, now VR, AR goggle headsets, and so on, is causing a distance, ironically, right? It's supposed to be connecting humans, which is Facebook's motto, but it's actually making people much more distant. People get a lot more aggressive and nasty when they are online because it's a bit like socially distant, so there's no social responsibility. One difference I feel every time I'm in Yerevan compared to living in LA is that here there is social accountability. You feel an obligation to behave better because it's a very small, very well-connected community. Like it takes 5 minutes between I say something and everyone that knows me knows about that in Yerevan, right? In Los Angeles, it's not like that. You get lost a little bit more. And it feels like then people feel like they don't have to live up to those expectations, social expectations, and so on. So unfortunately, technology can definitely lead to a lot of these challenges. Again, I think the conclusion is the same. If we have leaders, technical leaders that have more altruistic goals rather than just
the numbers.
Yeah. And again, US is very driven by numbers. Like public companies have quarter by quarter reporting obligations. And if they miss a quarter, even by a little bit, they get punished for it because investors then will pull out their money and all these things. So we have just set up a capitalistic system that's driven by that, which is driving greed, right? I mean, a corporation's CEO's obligation is maximizing return on investment for their investors. That's the stated objective of any corporation. If they tell you anything else, it's a lie. You come across as really understanding the human psyche and the human soul. At the age of 47 was the time when you built a really strong career. You worked for NASA. You started discovering what entrepreneurship is, and you built a really successful career. And then around that time, you realized, I've survived all these years to try to build the strength that I need to prove that I'm capable, I'm competent, and I'm successful. Now I want to contribute back to my community, my society. And things changed. Take me back to that time when you actually made that decision to start Embodied. And that's where the idea, or you already had the idea of Moxie a long time ago before that, but how did that come out? And what are you expecting Moxie would provide our children? So, my last company got acquired by iRobot, which is known as one of the largest consumer robotics companies.
I think my vacuum cleaner
is a Roomba.
Yeah, is a Roomba, yeah.
Yes. So, iRobot shipped 50 million Roombas globally, which is a very impressive number.
Right, of course.
they acquired my company. I became the CTO there. I stayed there for 3 years to helping them grow the business. And one day, flying back from Boston, where they're headquartered, flying back home for the weekend, I sort of decided it's time to move on and do something, but I had to think through it because I have a family, you have obligations. iRobot was very generous, so it was going to require a major lifestyle change potentially to do this. I tend to be a risk taker, but I don't have to put my family through it every time I do this. So I remember I came home on Friday, I slept over it, and then Sunday morning I woke up and I told my wife, I'm thinking about quitting my job at iRobot. And the first reaction she had is, are you crazy? And I thought about the question and I said, probably there is some of that too. There's some craziness. Because
you did the same thing when you left NASA.
Correct.
Right? You
yes.
and
my son was just born when I left NASA. So I said, yes, I'm probably a little bit crazy, but it takes crazy to change the world, right? If we are all compliant with what is expected of us and so on, it's going to be status quo. So you got to have some people that step out of the box and say, I'm going to do something that people think I'm crazy and do it. And I was at a place in my life where I said, listen, life is too short. You got to follow your dreams. Building robotic vacuum cleaners is not what I was planning to do when I was working through my career. That's where I ended up. And sometimes you have to be realistic, right? But it was time to step out of that box and say, let's try to do this. But of course, with the obligations of the family, I had to get a little bit of support. And I'm fortunate enough to have a wife that is supportive of my ideas. Because otherwise it would not be possible. Because I'm responsible enough to know that I can't just be selfish. Otherwise I'll be that crazy mad scientist that lives alone and all these things, right? So she's always been supportive of my crazy ideas. And after we discussed it a little bit, she said, listen, when you put your mind to something, you'll get it done, I know. If that's what you want to do, let's go for it. And then my son challenged me a little bit similarly. And then after he realized it, and I think he realized that when you're at a place in your life where you can contribute back, I think is something that most people don't realize early enough in their life, the joy of giving back. And this is a phrase I learned from an investor I had in my previous company. One day I get this random call from an investor named David Gelbaum. I had never heard about the name. He is calling me and he says, what you're doing is very fascinating and so on. And are you looking for any investments? By the way, this doesn't happen. Usually you go chase investors and it takes a lot of hard work and many no's before you get the one yes that wants to invest in your company. So I was like, it felt like this may be fraud or something like that. And I said, yes, I'm actually looking for raising $6 million. And he says, well, I would like to take that if you don't mind. I'm like, okay, this doesn't make sense. It's probably fraud and so on. Then I said, I would love to meet you. And I met him. He looked very humble. We had a conversation and then he started telling me more about it. I tried to do research on him online before meeting. I just found one article because he's a very private person. I found one article about him that was, he had donated $170 million to Katrina victims. So that was one indicator that he's wealthy. He turned out he was a math prodigy. He had amassed massive wealth, billions and billions of dollars, and he had chosen to give it all away to causes that he believed in. So when I was talking to him over lunch, I sort of tried to figure out, why are you investing in my company? I mean, you don't need it. And he said, I figured out I don't have enough money to cover all the causes I need. So I'm investing money to make more money. That's how he had made his money to begin with, by the way. And that's where he says, many people realize too late in their life the joy of giving back. And this guy literally worth multiple $billions was spending money on causes that was
improving mankind.
Improving mankind.
Yeah. And that's how, and the intention for Moxie, obviously for you, is also to do the same thing, to improve based on things that children go through these days, right? I mean, that's the fact when I say about lacking this human connection at a young age, children are already using their, tablets, their phones, the connection with parents or friends is limited. And obviously if they have issues, bullying, harassment, trauma, death, war,
absolutely,
that's where Moxie comes in. Tell me a little bit about where you see Moxie going in the next few years.
Yeah, so when we started the company, it was actually looking at all of that, but also looking at elderly care and other parts of the population. So in US, as an example, for elderly, social isolation is a challenge. Neurodegenerative disorders like Alzheimer's, dementia, and so on is a challenge. Adhering to medication and not forgetting to take your medicine is a challenge. Companionship is a big challenge, and so on. And just to give another example that highlights the challenge here is social isolation. The Surgeon General of US made this statement last year that social isolation is equivalent to smoking 1 pack of cigarettes in terms of its negative impact on your health.
Right.
Because it affects your mental health and it starts affecting your physical health. We just don't have enough people in the industry that caters to humans to take care of people. So we don't have enough nurses. We have a massive shortage of nursing. 1.4 million positions are open in US in nursing, right? Nurses are busy. They don't have time to chit-chat with elderly that really are alone and want to chit-chat. They don't want to just be fed and get a shot and all this. They want to chit-chat. At the other end of the spectrum, where we decided to start first, but although our mission is we want to go all the way to elderly care and all these things, was we actually specifically start with autism. Because a very specific condition where children have a hard time socializing. And what happens as a result is that they get rejected by their peers in school. It's
and they're
not
alone.
That, yes, and it's not that children on the spectrum don't have feelings. They're just not very good at expressing it, nor are they very good at reading other people's emotions. That's why their interactions with people gets awkward. They don't know, for instance, when it's their turn to talk. They may not make eye contact. So it feels awkward for them, and they need to go to therapy. As a matter of fact, the only thing we know of in therapy that has evidence for working is that the intensity of the therapy, 20 to 40 hours a week is the therapy they need. There's a massive shortage of therapists. It's 1 to every 350 children, so the cost is through the roof. Waiting lists are long, and no one can really afford it. I mean, I met with families that live in Manhattan or Beverly Hills. They have live-in Ph.D. level child development expert that charges $200,000-300,000 a year, but who can afford that, right? So there is a massive need and gap, and that's where we decided to start, but we're broadening it. Now we help every child focus on social emotional development, and now we just announced we're developing academic development, which is related to your previous question about changing the way education happens and learning happens, because education has to happen all the time, everywhere. And then we are going to go to adult populations, we are going to go to elderly populations, we are going to go to hospitality and so on. So what we are creating is a technology that's going to have a kind, hospitable personality.
Non-judgmental.
Non-judgmental, kind, wants to be helpful and all these things. So I say it this way, I say we are creating technology that has the heart of Mother Teresa, but with the knowledge and brain of 1,000 Albert Einsteins. So it can impact education, hospitality. One day in the future, if we are successful, you go to a hotel and a robot will take care of you, right? Even maybe you may have a personal butler in the hotel room that takes care of your needs and reservations, or your yoga lesson, even instructor and so on. And now you may say this is very dystopian, but it's not. There are 300 million jobs that need to be filled. Cost of labor is increasing. Many people are beginning to move to other jobs than low, minimum wage jobs. So we are going to need this, and it's going to provide better care for people that cannot afford to pay for a nurse to come and spend 2 hours with you, or that, so there's a huge labor gap. I mean, the very pragmatic way of saying there's a huge labor gap in services that cater to humans, and what we are trying to do is close that gap. And this is going to be a multi-trillion-dollar industry. And this is, by the way, going back to your previous question, this is why I'm interested in having Armenia be part of that journey, because this will change the game for us. If our neighboring countries have access to oil, we have access to the human brain capacity to do this. We absolutely can. It's not a question of if, it's only a question of when.
I think you're absolutely right. It's I looked into the cost of Moxie. I was just thinking people who are in Armenia, or schools that want to actually take this robot, or even different organizations that work in social work. It's pretty affordable because everybody has an iPhone, and it's almost the same price as an iPhone. So it's very reasonable. I think I really look forward to seeing how Moxie will be developed, especially having different languages, being accessible to different countries. The knowledge is there. I think it's just a matter of, like you said, when. So the time is just a question of when that will be implemented. How do you see? I mean, you've been coming and going to Armenia. You've been meeting with different people, different organizations, different corporations. So you're getting a good sense. How do you see the future of Armenia with what you know today? And of course, people cannot foresee the future. What does your gut say?
I'm super excited. I see a lot of people working really hard building a nation. This is what I see. Like literally, I see a lot of people have rolled up their sleeves, and they're working on so many aspects of building a nation, from education, from infrastructure, from technology, from strategy, and all these things. We have a lot of work to do. I would say, I'm not a political person, this is just pragmatic perspective. I would say for decades we have not done that, and now we have a lot of catching up to do. I see government entities, smart, young, educated ministers working very hard around the clock trying to figure out what we need to do. I see leaders in technology and companies that are rolling up their sleeves and building companies. And by the way, the other thing is just looking at the metrics. In the last 12 years we have been coming, especially in the last 5-6 years, I've seen like step change improvements in so many things. So many things. Just one example, 12 years ago when I came here, the cars you would see on the streets were
Lada and Volvo
falling apart.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, there would be a hole in the bottom of the car. You will see the street. Now, I mean, we have a ton of cars that are much better. It's better for the environment. It's better for safety. It's better for comfort. And I don't see any of the other cars anymore. This is a very rapid transition, by the way, right? And of course, prices have gone up. Is that good or bad? Well, it looks like people are getting by. Everyone has afforded to buy a car. I'm guessing there's more than 1 million cars in Yerevan now, right? Everyone has upgraded. This is like $20,000 to $30,000 upgrade per person. So that's a lot of money flowing into the. We see GDP is improving. We see education is improving. We see diaspora Armenians coming back here, investing, right? For instance, myself partnered up with an amazing team in Armenia about 6 years ago. In the last 6 years, we have invested about $10 million here. I would like that to be 100. I would like that to be $1 billion, right? And we'll get there. Of course, one thing that's concerning and in everyone's back of mind is security of the country. How are we going to protect that? A lesson that we have learned over and over and over and over again is that no one is going to help us. We got to help ourselves. So hopefully, I'm not involved in any defense technology, but I'm sure there are people that are very capable that are working on that.
Paolo, it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise.
I'm so happy you came with Moxie Moxie's staring at you, obviously, waiting for you to talk. We'll have a chance to have a conversation with Moxie in the future as well. I wish you, I wish Artsakh, I wish your family, I wish everything you do at Embodied greatest success, and I look forward to seeing you again here in Armenia.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.